All right, guys, I'm going to tell you why we do ACLs better and how we do ACLs better using some of the testing equipment and our expertise here. A lot of ACL rehabs are time-based, meaning that by week 12 you should be here, by week 16 you should be here. We focus on a criteria-based approach. So in order to move to the next stage, you have to satisfy a number of criteria. And the goal here is to have the athlete efficiently learn how to absorb forces, which is very, very, very important. Now, as I mentioned, there are criteria they need to satisfy before they get there. 80% limb symmetry between knee flexion and extension, not only in how much force, but how fast they can produce the force. And then the usual suspects like range of motion and leg circumference at 90%, and the ability to single leg squat 15 times 60 degrees. We use a few tests on the valve system once an athlete is here as a baseline to see where the athlete's current ability is at. So we'll use these tests to land and hold and the single leg land and hold, and then we'll test throughout the process until an athlete reaches under 15% of an asymmetry between the legs, at which stage we'll move to phase 2. Now we're going to focus on force production. Okay, so it's a second phase of return to sport. Again, there are criteria, and as I just talked about, the first one is a 15% asymmetry or less on both landing and landing force on the valve force decks, as well as an 85% difference in both strength and force production of the knee. There are different tests. Again, we use these tests as a baseline, so we'll use the counter movement jump and the squat jump, and we're looking for various metrics that are going to allow us to progress then to the final phase once they're reached. Specifically, we're looking at a counter movement jump being less than 10 to 15% different on eccentric and concentric rate of force development, and we're also looking at peak power as a metric throughout. So the goal here is to work on the stretch shortening cycle and the efficiency of that, as well as to get into some sport specific drills that will basically differ between what kind of athlete and not even that, what position they're playing. For these, as I mentioned, there are some criteria that we need, so you can see it's pretty intense. We need 90% between legs. We need most people to be jumping about 12 inches or higher on a single leg jump. Of that single leg jump, you have to be able to produce at least less than 20% concentric force on the injured versus non-injured leg. And lastly, 80% on the hop test. Once an athlete can clear this stuff here, we're looking at getting them back into some small-sided games, some drills on the field, maybe a practice with a pinion, and then eventually working their way up to getting fully back to sport.